Chapter 14. Hannah didn't get much sleep that night. She kept staring out the window, not able to decipher anything past the darkness on the other side of the glass panes. She sensed her mother also could not get any rest, for she tossed and turned for the majority of the night. She had not told her mother of her realization. She didn't know if she ever would. Hannah knew the royal advisor disliked her. For every time he was around, she could sense his hostility. He probably never wanted her to be queen, the prince choosing independently of his advisor's help, which Hannah presumed didn't happen often. The royal advisor appeared shocked when the prince defied him, as if the prince attempted to show his power in their presence. The royal advisor had kept the prince dancing in his palm for so long, able to manipulate and control every action and thought of the prince. It's no wonder the royal advisor wished the king dead, when one who would follow his every will could be ruling the land. Before she was aware of the time, she noticed the sun shining through the window. Perhaps she had gotten some rest without realizing it. However, she felt exhausted. Her mother, who was accustomed to rising early, carefully left the bed and moved to the sofa, staring at the ashes in the fireplace. Hannah wrapped a blanket about herself and sat next to her mother, resting her head on her mother's shoulder as if she had regressed to being a child once again. They sat unmoving as the ladies-in-waiting made the beds and tidied the cushions and blankets. A waiter wheeled in a cart with their breakfast, which included eggs, toast, and tea, and set the table near the window for the three. Van slept effortlessly through all of the noise. Evidently, his energy had been drained the night before. When no one moved to the table right away, the ladies-in-waiting started to look around awkwardly, as if they had no idea what to do or say. Hannah's mother, sensing the tension, thanked and dismissed them, informing them that the three could serve themselves. Having no immediate response to the strange suggestion, the ladies-in-waiting slowly walked out of the room, closing the door behind them. "Did you get a hold of Dad?" Hannah asked, poking at her eggs with a fork. "I sent a letter, but haven't yet gotten a response," her mother said, without looking up from her plate. "I wanted him to be able to attend the wedding, but you know your father. Work, work, work. That's all he does, barely leaving any time for the family." "I know you miss him when he's away on his long trips, and I'm certain he misses us, too. Sometimes I wonder what he loves more, his family or his career. He loves us both, in different ways." Hannah paused and gazed at her mother, understanding her to be revealing thoughts she'd kept hidden for years. Hannah sipped at her tea and sighed. "I don't know if I'll be able to forgive him if he doesn't come," her mother murmured, her heartache evident in her voice. "Do you love him?" As Hannah asked this, her voice cracked. She felt her hands trembling and hid them underneath the table. Her mother refused to move her eyes from her plate, tears streaming down her cheek and falling onto her lap. Growing up, Hannah had watched as her parents would gaze into each other's eyes, as they would cry when her father would leave for another trade mission. She thought that was love. She wanted the same thing for her future, for she believed her parents had found something beautiful. To think that her mother may not love her father may crush her heart, ruin every memory she cherished, every bond she felt to be sacred. Every dream she had as a child were turned to fantasy as the new reality set in. Perhaps raising a family and spending a life together was no longer about love, and perhaps her parents had known that. But Hannah refused to believe that love was a myth, that it didn't exist just because what she thought it wasn't. She knew she loved her mother, brother, and father, yet it seemed as if there was another layer, another type of love she'd not experienced. These thoughts flooded Hannah as she waited for her mother to answer. She had not expected the long pause. Hannah's mother released a large breath, calming her own heart and racing thoughts, no doubt, and raised her head to connect eyes with Hannah. Hannah could see a pain so evident she couldn't help but feel ashamed for asking the question in the first place. She opened her mouth to apologize, but as she did so, her mother spoke up. "I know I did, at one time, love your father. It was different, though. Young love. Much more romantic and intimate. I'm sure you'll understand one day." Hannah felt like disagreeing, but allowed her mother to continue without interruptions. "But I wonder some days if it's still love I feel. Whenever I see his face, I can't help but smile. and whenever he leaves, I feel a sharp sting in my heart, as if he's betrayed me, the family, all we tried to build together. I'm not sure if it's the same kind of love I felt all those years ago, but I cannot deny I care immensely for him, and I would trade my life for his own in a heartbeat. I don't know if it's love, but it's the only thing that keeps us together. I knew you were in pain. When Dad sent the flowers as an apology, I could see it in your eyes that you'd been crying, but you forced a smile anyways. Please, be honest with me. You haven't been faking a smile all along, have you? Hannah felt her heart quake, her hand tightly gripping the silverware, its metal form on the verge of slicing her. Her mother appeared shocked and quite ashamed of the question her daughter asked. Not ashamed of her daughter, but ashamed of herself that her daughter could think this way. No, Hannah. Sometimes my heart may hurt, but I will never fake a smile. My emotions may conflict, but I will not allow any negative emotion to bring me down, and I would never wish for you to feel otherwise, her mother stated in a soft, caring tone, her motherly nature showing once more. A knock was heard at the door. Hannah's mother rose to answer it, and after a few moments of indistinct conversation on Hannah's end, her mother shouted to her, "I'm going to speak with the ladies in waiting and some others about the preparations for the royal wedding. Be sure to wake Van before too late so he can eat while the food is still warm." Hannah turned to her mother and, with a faint smile, called back, "All right, be careful and have fun." The door closed behind her mother. The sound of the closing oak door sent a flurry of butterflies into Hannah's stomach. Thoughts of the wedding were ever present in her mind. It's not as though she was happy for taking this position rather than Nina. But, knowing what she knows now, she was glad she did. Granted, Nina may not have been seen as a nuisance for trying to get involved in business the royal advisor would rather keep between himself and the prince. Nina may have been safe. But Hannah did not regret the situation, no matter how she desired to have Nina as her friend again. Hannah pushed around the remaining eggs on her plate. She gazed at her brother, who continued to sleep. A devious smile formed. She tore off a portion of her toast and threw it at her brother. Van swiped at his face as if swatting a fly, then he nodded off and returned to his dreams. Hannah tossed another piece, this one hitting him on the nose. His head shook, and Van drowsily opened his eyes. He sat up and expectantly grumbled. "Really?" "You need to eat before your breakfast gets cold," Hannah responded, as if throwing toast was meant as a service to him. "I'm not hungry," Van responded, turning away and covering his head in the blanket. Hannah's face grew confused and concerned. She attempted to sneak a peek at Van's face, but was unable. Hannah looked at her plate and licked her lips. "Van, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Van answered in a not-so-convincing tone. "Van." Hannah started but paused. She looked about the room, searching for the appropriate words, but found nothing. Lacking the words, she asked once more, "What's wrong?" "I said I'm fine." Van jumped out of his makeshift bed, grabbed a piece of toast, and stormed from the room. He slammed the door behind him, Hannah staring in shock. She wondered what could have caused such a reaction from Van. He had never acted out in such an explosive manner before. As Hannah moved her eyes back to her plate, she heard a knock on the door. She chuckled, thinking Van had already returned from his rage, but when she opened the door, another face looked back at her. She felt a chill rise up her spine. "Good morning, Miss Baker," the royal advisor said in a monotone voice, which lacked all forms of enthusiasm or welcoming. "Good morning," Hannah responded, almost if out of habit. "I hope you've finished your breakfast, for we have a long day ahead of us." Hannah had to force herself to not laugh, noting the advisor's irritation at being assigned the task of joining her that day for her tasks, though her amusement quickly disappeared when she realized that she too would have to spend a day with him, which did not seem like an enjoyable experience. A fear struck her. She recalled her thoughts from the night before and found difficulty swallowing. Perhaps she could convince him through her actions and obedience to not kill her when the opportunity arises. Perhaps she could save herself yet. "Yes, the breakfast was excellent, thank you," Hannah replied, attempting to force a friendly smile. This only made the royal advisor appear more annoyed, but also confused. "Yes, well, today you will be getting your dress fitted, as well as learning the proper etiquette for the wedding day." "Oh, right," Hannah responded. She examined the room and, realizing she was alone, sighed and followed the royal adviser to their first destination. As the ladies-in-waiting and Master Tailor stitched and seamed the extravagant wedding dress, which was made of the same material as the queen's before her, Hannah felt quite spoiled. She was unused to being serviced and treated in such a manner, more accustomed to being the one doing the servicing at the bakery. While the women did their work, the royal adviser, who was meant to serve as Hannah's supervisor, appeared quite bored by the activities. Hannah periodically glanced at him, unnerved by the absence of hostility. When the dress fitting finished, or when the adviser said the fitting was finished, for the tailor was quite displeased, the pair headed to the library for etiquette lessons. As the grand oak doors opened, Hannah's jaw dropped at the amount of books lining the shelves, the large crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, and the regal brick fireplace in the corner for reading in comfort, presumably. After scanning the room, Hannah's eyes lowered to look at her etiquette tutor. The royal adviser led her to an older woman standing tall and proud, with a grayish-white bun atop her head. Blue eyes squinted, as if she had begun judging Hannah the moment the door opened. Her waist was very thin, her large hoop skirt making her person appear disproportionate. Next to the tutor stood a recognizable face, her brown, curly hair covering her face as she looked to the ground, as if refusing to look at Hannah. But Hannah cared not for what happened in the past. She ran forward and screamed, "Nina!" When she felt a forceful, disapproving glare from the tutor, she stopped short of embracing Nina, and, with a little mockery included, did a curtsy to Nina. Hannah tried to peek around Nina's hair in an attempt to meet eyes, but Nina's eyes avoided her. "Nina?" Hannah questioned, starting to doubt her first impression, but knowing it to be her friend. Nina slowly raised her head and shared an apprehensive grin with Hannah. Hannah looked to the adviser, the first thought being that they may have hurt Nina in bringing her here, whether physically or emotionally. The royal adviser appeared unknowing, or at the least uncaring, as to why Nina acted in such a way. He cleared his throat to begin introductions. "Miss Baker, this is Clarissa Maestra. She will be your etiquette teacher. As you've already noticed, we have brought your friend who will be joining us for the wedding. We, the members of the royal court and myself, knew not of your other friends. Therefore, Miss Mason will join the wedding party along with some of the castle's ladies-in-waiting." Hannah's eyes met the royal adviser's, and she graciously smiled. "Thank you," Hannah said. The royal adviser appeared taken aback by the gratitude and cleared his throat once more. "The two of you will be taught the proper etiquette for the wedding day. You must learn how to walk, dance, eat, and greet properly," the royal adviser stated, as if reminding the tutor of her job, the act of which seemed to irritate her. "Yes, I am aware of my responsibilities," the tutor responded, barely parting her lips to speak. The royal adviser returned the look of contempt. Hannah started to wonder which of the two would be harder to get along with, but she quickly shook the thought, wanting to get the lessons done with so she could spend time with Nina. Hannah tried to think of what she would tell Nina first, though an apology seemed most fit. Not that Hannah had anything to be sorry about. She simply felt the first step to mending their friendship would be an apology, one she knew would never happen if she waited for Nina to do so. As the etiquette lessons took place, the royal adviser kept his distance, being sure not to get in the way of the tutor. Hannah peered at Nina, hoping she could find an opportunity to talk to her friend. However, Nina maintained eye contact with the tutor at all times, Hannah often being called out as being distracted for diverting her eyes. The tutor taught the two how to properly dance, back straight and chin up, maintaining eye contact and a gentle face at all times. Next, the two were taught how to eat properly, learning which utensils to use with what dishes, how to chew before talking, how to hold a wine goblet, and to remember to sit up straight. Learning to properly greet was not Hannah's favorite lesson, for she grew impatient as the tutor forced her to repeat the same sentence until her tone was pleasant. Nina also had some trouble pleasing the tutor, though she did a fantastic job in hiding her irritation. Hannah was quite impressed, for the Nina she was accustomed to would have broken long before she herself would have. Lastly, they were taught how to walk properly, with elegance and poise, as the tutor put it. Hannah grew frustrated as the tutor followed her around with a wooden stick, hitting the parts of Hannah's body she felt needed corrected. As the lesson continued, books were placed atop their head for added difficulty, though the tutor stated that no royalty she had ever taught had a problem with such tasks. When the lessons finished, the royal advisor immediately attempted to rush Hannah from the room and onto the next royal wedding festivity, but Hannah was reluctant to leave. She stared at Nina, hoping to get at least some sort of response, but Nina kept quiet and still, the opposite of the Nina that Hannah wished to see. "I'll see you around, Nina," Hannah said, despite the casualness of her tone going against what the tutor had taught. However, Nina did not look up. Hannah knew she was hiding something, but had no idea as to what it could be. "Next, you will be having lunch with the prince. Be certain to execute all of which you just learned with the utmost mastery. If the prince feels you are not ready for the wedding, you will need to return to the old hag," the royal advisor stated, his tone unchanging as he insulted the etiquette tutor, as if he knew Hannah felt the same way.